Life is all about relationships. Lovers, family, body, or money. How satisfied you are can be completely explained by how you relate to things around you. This is Sophie Jaffe, and together with my husband, Dr. Adi Jaffe, we are here to explore and teach you how to maximize your relationships and achieve a happier life. Let's get ignited. This episode of Ignited is brought to you by Four Sigmatic.
These guys make some of the coolest mushroom-based powders on earth. No, not those mushrooms. These are those medicinal and holistic wellness powders.
They make a few different ones, and I've loved using them for a few years now.
Yeah, you've been using them for longer than I have.
Absolutely. I first found out about Four Sigmatic years ago. They work in such beautiful synergy with my philosophy products.
Yeah, they're really great. They have packets of just single mushrooms like lion's mane mushroom.
I love lion's mane. I use it every single day.
But did you know that Buddhist monks use it to help during meditation?
I mean, it makes sense. No wonder I'm attracted to it.
There you go. They also have ones with coffee in them, and they use pure Arabica beans, so that's the good stuff. And they even have packets with cacao, and you know that because I love making the super powdered hot chocolate.
Yeah, I love bringing these in travel. They make life so much easier. When we were in Israel, I use them every single day because they're so easy to use. We use them all together. Again, I use them in travel, and also in the mornings, I like to mix a really yummy, supercharged coffee with Four Sigmatic and philosophy. We make it almost every single morning, and if you want to grab that recipe, you can check it out in the link in our show notes.
Seriously, if you want to superpower your life with these magic mushrooms from our friends at Four Sigmatic, just head over to foursigmatic.com/ignited, that's IGNTD, and use the code IGNITED at checkout, and you'll receive 15% off of your entire purchase.
Such a good discount.
Yeah, and the offer is awesome, the product is awesome, and you should head over there right now.
Thanks, guys.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Ignited podcast. I'm Adi Jaffe, and Sophie is laid out in bed tonight. So she will not be here with us, unfortunately. And, you know, we just ran a couple of couples workshops in Seattle. Props to everybody who was there. It was an incredible experience. What we also realized is we don't give ourselves enough space, right, in the middle of all this work. So we both ended up having essentially a 17, 18-day straight work week. We preach against that all the time, but we did it to ourselves. I got sick while in Seattle. You can maybe still hear in my voice a little bit. Sophie went down our last day there on our way back here. And so, unfortunately, I'm going to have to do this one alone. And I thought this was a really good opportunity to bring you a guest. I think it's safe to say, unlike any guest we've ever brought you before. I met Kyle through a friend, Dr. Christopher Ryan, whose podcast, Tangentially Speaking, I had been on a couple of times, and he told me, you really should talk to my friend Kyle. And I said, cool, let's bring it together. Chris knows some pretty amazing people, and I thought, let's see what gets pulled out of here. I don't think I was quite ready for what Kyle pulled out. So I'm going to say this. It's going to sound weird when I say it right now, given the kind of episodes we've done up to now, but Kyle is probably going to appreciate the fact that he's episode 69. You will get more of that as we speak here. You know, Kyle's a character, man. I live in this world of fuck shame, right? And Kyle embodies it in a way that I don't think a lot of other people I've met in my life do. I don't want to break too many of the little reveals that he does in the interview because it's really amazing, but he's got his own powerful podcast that we will link into here. He's a surfer, he's a nomad, he's a environmental evangelist, and I think you'll see what I'm saying when I tell you that he lives and breathes this I live who I am kind of mission that we're all about. And the reason I love that is, look, you know, when we did this couples workshop in Seattle just a few days ago, you realize pretty quickly that everybody has their own slant on life. I found my version of what feels really, really good, and it might change in the future, but it feels perfect the way it is right now. But that doesn't mean that has to work for anybody else, right? And I think the whole fuck shame piece, another part of that is fuck judgment, right? Is how do I step away from feeling like I need to judge other people for not living the way that I live, and instead respect, honor, and support, let alone accept, the choices that they make. And Kyle is unabashed about his own choices, and I love it, and it's fun, and we laugh. And he's also going to tell you about an event that he and Chris put together. I'm not going to break the secret on that at all, but it already passed for this year, but you're definitely going to want to get some tickets if you're in the LA area or can make it to the LA area. In about 10 months is my guess is when the next one will be. It was I was there. It was pretty epic. So because Sophie's not here, I don't want to get too deeply into an intro. That's why I love having her, right? Is we get to have the banter back and forth. But I'm going to sit here with my Four Sigmatic coffee, trying to get better. I'm going to go make her tea. And I just wanted to tell you about a handful of things that are going on that I think you might want to join in on. So, first of all, Sophie's Philosophy Company. If you don't know that Sophie owns Philosophy, then you need to get your head checked. Thephilosophy.com. They are having a cleanse event that is starting March 25th. And the way they do these is they'll have a group cleanse. So everybody will buy the cleanses at the same time, and they have a Facebook group for it, and everybody supports each other through a 5 or 14 day, I believe. I'm not sure if they do one or another, but you can get more details on that just if you join Sophie's email list at thephilosophy.com. So that's number one. Secondly, we're going to have an event. Ignited is going to have an event in LA on Abbot Kinney at Sage Wellness. It's a company we love and support, and they make these amazing diffusers that we use throughout our home. And so we're going to have an event 3/23, March 23rd, coming up here. And we're going to actually record a live Ignited episode while we do it. So we will announce more times. There will be a link down below for the event area, for the event component of our Ignited website, where you can get more information. And we'd love for you to join us. And in case you haven't heard, I've kind of been yelling it from every rooftop. So we will also have a 21-day habit busting reset challenge starting April 1st. In case you're wondering what that is, it's going to be a 21-day challenge where I am with you every day for 21 days, going live with you every day and giving you little tiny exercises along the way every day to break through your subconscious beliefs and be able to reset some of the most harmful habits you have in your life. Binging on TV, paying attention to your phone too much, fighting, alcohol, whatever it is, smoking, whatever it is that's happening for you, we're going to give you a method over this 21-day challenge to focus in on one of these habits and reset it. There will be a link here below for the website for that. We're going to start taking signups in literally about 3-4 days from when this comes out, but check it out. It might already be live right now. So excited about this. It's been a long time since I've been able to offer something brand new to you all. So that's a lot of stuff happening. The Philosophy Cleanse, March 25th, our event at Sage, March 23rd, and this 21-day challenge that is going to be amazing, starting April 1st. And you'll be able to sign up for it in mid-March for sure. So put on your thinking caps. Do not let children listen to this with you in the car, unless, I don't know, they're like 16, 17 and you just don't care. And yeah, I really want to hear from you all what you think about the interview with Kyle. So do me a favor, screenshot this, tag me. Kyle Thiermann is at Kyle Thiermann, I believe, is Kyle's handle, and let us know which part of this episode hit you in the chest. Hopefully not while you're driving. Well, I guess you could get hit in the chest a little bit while driving. But this is one for the books, guys. So pay attention, listen up. We'll be back right after this break.
This episode of the Ignited podcast is brought to you by Philosophy Superfoods. The Philosophy offers cleanses and other nutritional products that are unlike any of the other supplements and detoxification programs on the market. Why? Because they actually nourish the body with whole, live, nutrient-rich foods instead of depriving you and leaving you hungry. Have you ever tried a cleanse only to find out that you can't make it through a whole day because you're starving? Ever try a superfood shake that made you nauseous because it was so disgusting you'd rather not eat? The Philosophy fix all that with a simple set of offerings that load up your body with nutrients while actually tasting good. Makes sense, right? Each of the Philosophy superfood and protein blends is vegan, raw, gluten-free, and has absolutely no filler ingredients. With over 15,000 satisfied customers, including some of the world's biggest celebrities like George Clooney, Gerard Butler, Lea Michele, and over 10 years of experience, this is the best stuff you can get. To buy some or find out more info, go to our website, thephilosophy.com.
All right, everybody, welcome back to our little conversation component of today's episode. We're gonna have some fun today. I can tell it just from the outset. Kyle, you got introduced to me by our common friend Christopher Ryan, whose podcast I've been on, you've been on. We've all. It's like this. It becomes incestuous.
It's like very incestuous. Yeah, you're like, how do we all know each other? Oh,
we've all recorded each other talking. And you know, I love. We were talking about this beforehand, but kind of like Chris has talked to so many amazing people that anytime he recommends talking to somebody, I go, fuck yeah, just whatever, like just, you know, make the intro. And he's such a fun guy that that having that recommendation was really, really cool. And then I looked into your world, which seems so different than Christopher's, right? Like I couldn't fathom the two of you as like buddies doing the work you guys are doing together. And yet here you are, doing a lot of stuff together. We'll get to that as well. But I want to start out even simpler with you introducing. You're a surfer, you producer, like you've done all this stuff. You're from Santa Cruz originally. I can give that part away. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners to let them know who you are and how you got to sit here?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kyle. I'm a surfer and journalist and writer. So I surf professionally for Patagonia. Big part of my year is traveling around the world, chasing waves, which is about as good as it gets.
Yeah, it doesn't sound shitty.
It does not sound shitty. And really early on when I started traveling, I brought a video camera with me. I was watching way too much Vice News as a teenager and kind of gave myself permission to make these documentaries in surf spots around the world. A lot of the most pressing environmental issues are happening on coasts in developing countries. Many of these stories are not reported on. And very early on, I decided to do a series called Surfing for Change.
What's very early on?
I would say when I was 18, we made the first micro documentary. It was just a short form documentary about a proposed coal power plant going on the beach of this really well-known surf town in Constitucion, Chile. It's in central Chile. It's a really beautiful place, dirt roads, fishing village. It's a lot like Northern California, just on the other side of the equator.
Yeah.
And the coal plant was being proposed near the beach because coal plants suck ocean water in. Many of them do to cool the machinery. Then they spit it back out. It was going to destroy the fishery in the area. And I was down there and became more interested in, I love asking questions. I'm very curious. Whenever I would go on a trip, my mom would give me the book about the country. So she'd say, hey, Kyle, you're going to get to go to Chile. Read this book about how the CIA put Pinochet in power in the 70s because as
these
an
were
American,
books your mom was giving you?
Yeah, she would give me these books. And,
that's amazing.
It was very much instilled in me from an early age that a good education is a global education. And
that is not American in nature.
No, it's not. But we love to travel,
yeah.
And we would figure out ways to do it. You know, you can still travel on the cheap and figure out where the good plane tickets are, how to get miles on a credit card. And Patagonia would help out, which I'm so grateful for. They've been my longtime sponsor. And I made this short form documentary about how Bank of America was financing the coal power plant in Chile. And that when you put your money into a bank, that money doesn't stay there. It's lent out to finance projects that you may not necessarily support. And I put this video out on YouTube. It was for a school project.
Oh, wow.
And it was in 2008, same year as the financial collapse. So the video started getting shared around quite a bit. And I thought to myself, man, this is I love learning through experience. I love going out into the world, sitting at tables that I have no business being at and asking questions. Technology is getting to the point where you can pretty cheaply now make a movie. You need a little camera and iMovie or Adobe Premiere and throw something up on YouTube. And if it hits, it can be a really fun story to tell. So I always kind of saw what I do as a chance to get little micro degrees in these various issues.
Just go really deep into a topic, learn more about it than a lot of people know, and then share that.
Yeah, well, if you want to make a good movie, even if it's a 4-minute YouTube movie, if you're trying to convey information, it's important to understand the topic completely, or as much as completely as possible, to know what information is important to convey in the film, and kind of how to trick people into paying attention to these issues, because unfortunately when you start talking about environmental issues, people's eyes glaze over and they don't want to hear it because it creates this kind of existential angst.
Yeah.
So the surfing part was a little bit of this, it was kind of like a spoonful of sugar. We would go on these adventures, and I figured out a way to make it work. I learned how to write grants. I went to a college called Gaia University. There was an independent college program. I could get credit for doing these projects. We covered the Indonesia trash epidemic, all the protests in Hawaii around the agrochemical countries. Check it out on Surfing for Change, but you'll see a young kid with a big blonde afro trying to tell you about the banking system.
That's awesome.
And it was fun, man. I didn't know what I was doing, but got thrown into the frying pan. And fast forward a few years after that, I started working with Discovery Digital Network up in San Francisco.
That's like a digital arm of Discovery?
It's like the boutique next to the Goliath that is Discovery, and used a lot of those same skills, but had a chance to work with a really talented team there and learn about what a media company of that scale does and how much content they churn out, and learned a ton. Got to do a story down again in Chile about an indigenous conflict that was happening down in the south. I got to do one that
between two tribes?
It was between logging companies and this indigenous group called the Mapuche. They actually make up about 11% of Chile's population, and one of Chile's largest exports is timber. So down in the south, they have this tree called Monterey pine, which originally came from Monterey, which is where I'm from, but it's one of their largest exports. And a huge amount of the land down there was taken from the Mapuche for logging interests, and now the Mapuche they're burning utility companies, trucks. It was becoming violent, and we were on a surf trip down there, and I had my camera with me. I was there with my girlfriend, who's a filmer. We looked to see if anyone had really covered the topic in video form. We reached out to a Chilean named Nicolas Rios, who is a writer for Vice. He was one of the few people who had written on the topic. And we said, hey, this could be fun to do. And he's like, I'm in, let's make it happen. The next morning we drove down, I think it's called the Five, It's the longest highway in Chile. It goes all the way down through the country.
Oh, wow.
Drove through the middle of the night. The next morning, we showed up at this little town in southern Chile. It was foggy, and we went to a court hearing where 10 Mapuche were on trial for having just done a peaceful sit-in at the local utility company, and there were military vehicles on every single corner, because one of the big points of this issue was that there had been some anti-terrorism laws that had recently been reinstated, this Pinochet-era anti-terrorism laws that were locking the Mapuche up without trial. So we showed up, and we were the only media company to go there. We're like, man, this is wild.
Yeah.
How did we get here? We interviewed the Mapuche. We went into a little village and met with a woman whose house had been burnt down by the military. And we sold it to Discovery Digital Network, who I'd been working with. They put it up. I think it's got 100,000 more views now, but that's kind of been my shtick, man, is going to these spots and figuring out a way to tell an interesting story while I'm there.
I love the way that you combine. I'm assuming surfing started as fun. Right, like you and your friends in Santa Cruz, just the ocean's right
Trying
there.
to get girls.
Everybody's. And I think in the end, probably for men, half the stuff comes down to trying to get girls. But so you're surfing, and that was fun. That was good, and then you get sponsorship because you get really good, and so you get to travel the world, which by itself is a dream, right, for a lot of people. I like how you turn that, because there are a lot of different documentaries you could have made, but you turned it into a cause-based documentary filmmaking, right? So trying to right wrongs or expose them, at least if you can't right them. What do you think did that? Why go towards that? Why you had the video camera before that coal operation was about to happen on a beach. What made that be the thing that you wanted to go after?
Well, we were talking about before how you feel like if you can explain a situation to one of your clients who's an addict better, it can potentially allow them to see their situation in a little bit different way.
Absolutely, like perspective, right?
Yeah. And I've always, all the documentaries that I've made, all the podcasts that I do now, they're always for an audience of one. It's always based out of my own curiosity and asking questions. And I think that, it's an interesting question because a lot of the stuff that I do is about the darkness and the way the world works. But I think that if I can explain it better to people, like, hey, this is how all of these coal operations are getting their money to happen. It's actually with your money. Maybe that can help people understand why some things are the way that they are.
There's a David and Goliath feel to it a little bit too, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I'm a dude with a camera. You're
surfer. Surfer
I'm
with
a surfer
camera.
with a camera. You're Bank of America. Let's duel.
Well, I think that so many people are afraid to call out multinational corporations. I think that I have no problem with a company that wants to go out and make money, but if all of a sudden your product is creating a huge amount of suffering around the world and costs that you're not bearing, that should be called out.
Yeah. Do you think? I mean, you dove into that story, and I haven't watched the video, but you probably know the answer to this. Was Bank of America aware of the impact, or was it one of those things where they just don't really care, so they just spread money around where they think they're going to make money, and there's collateral damage?
Well, I think that it's they're one of the largest financiers of coal power globally, so
Okay.
they know. But if you look from their perspective, any of these companies' perspective, let's take in your world, Purdue Pharma.
Sure.
The company that came out with OxyContin,
Yep.
Also came out with Suboxone.
The first non-addictive pain medication, by the way, that they were touting, OxyContin, when it first came out.
Yeah, and they were sued for $600 million for false marketing practices. and have basically been responsible for the opioid epidemic that we now have. I think that they, you look from their perspective, they want to make money, and they want to kick that can as far down the road as they can. So it's about the stuff that I like to call out, and I think is important to call out, is when a person or a company is doing something that is putting the costs onto the public or future generations, and they're not taking a holistic approach to bearing those costs. I think we should talk about that, and journalism is important for that reason.
Well, the beautiful thing, I think, by doing those videos, you introduce a new cost.
Right.
If you think about it, because now they need PR money spent on fixing the damage from that, right? So that adds a new cost, which changes the cost-benefit analysis they do around projects. Like if hey, there's this project over here in Chile, and if we put money into it, we're going to double our money, right? So not get prime on it, but get like 100% return. That's great. But if we know that people are watching us and doing that project is going to end up eating away half of that profit because court cases and PR nightmares that we have to defend against, maybe we make a different decision, right? So maybe like essentially what you're doing is you're creating a new factor to consider and that's what Vice does, and like a lot of these kind of investigative journalism outfits. You're essentially creating a cost and therefore changing the equation of what is important to the people who are focused on money.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you said earlier there are no objective truths, right? It's all about perspective and how much do you value something. Like I think that I was thinking again about your question, why do I do what I do?
Yeah.
A huge amount of it's my relationship with nature. Simply put, I mean, I love being out in the wild.
Yeah.
I love surfing. I'm very enthusiastic about camping, bow hunting, spearfishing.
Okay.
I spent a lot of my time deeply immersed in our elements.
I love it.
And I don't think we value nature correctly.
Yeah.
Because we're externalizing so much. We say like, oh, okay, well, here's the timber. This is how much money we're going to make for it. But you start asking those questions like, how does it make you feel to be out there? How did, what kind of romance does nature give you?
Yeah, I mean, and we're in LA right now. When you first came in here, we were just talking before we recorded anything. I was saying, where do you live? And your response was, I'm a dirtbag, because you kind of couch surf and you stay with people and you travel. Like you don't really live anywhere. You just travel.
Yeah.
Like you're a nomad.
Yeah, I mean, I have a spot in Santa Cruz that I rent with a few friends. We have cheap rent, and that's where I keep all my big wave boards and my spearfishing gear and all those toys. But it makes it nice not to own much stuff.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
So you get the world is your home, and maybe that brings a little more care to the world than somebody, I mean, even like myself, right? Like we're in this townhouse where I live with my wife and my kids, and most of our stuff is here. The rest of it is probably with my family in Israel. And so it creates this false sense that this is everything that's important, is the house that we're in right now. And you lose the context. I mean, if we're talking about relationships, you lose the context of how this house depends on what's happening all around it. And how LA, I mean, we're not losing it right now. We're a week out from the beginning of one of the most deadliest, or the deadliest fire in the state of California since we started recording. That's the world. And we can ignore it all we want. It'll come back. I always say to people that I think people have the wrong perspective. We're talking a lot about perspective around climate change, right? People keep thinking that it's people's job to save the world. The world is fine. The world doesn't fucking need us. The world will be here when we are long gone. It's people's responsibility to take care of the world so they can take care of us. Because if temperatures rise and sea levels go and all that stuff that is happening as we speak and was going to keep happening unless some monumental change happens, and it will, right? Like worst case scenario, and this is bad for people, but worst case scenario, we're going to eat up so much land and kill so many people because of climate change that things will rebalance to some extent. There's now real conversations happening for people around, well, what would it look like to live on the moon? or Mars. Like we've gotten to the point now where we're fucking shit up so badly that we're talking about it. Like for me, like moving to a different neighborhood, we're going like, well, yeah, we could live on the moon.
Yeah.
What the fuck are you talking about? Like, what is that? How does that even look?
Right.
And what world are we living in? And we forget that we have this thing. We can just take care of it, but there's probably some sacrifices that we have to make along the way. Like in any good relationship, I can't get everything I want out of my partner. I have to take care of the relationship at its core, and then we both do better.
Right. I think that one reason why people's eyes do glaze over when environmental issues are introduced to the conversation is because it feels so big. It feels like there's nothing that you can do, that it becomes hopeless. And you asked, going back to that question, like, why do I do what I do? I think another reason is because I get to hang out with really cool people all the time.
That's
a lot
awesome.
of the people who I interview for my podcast are people who are turned on. They're doing good work in their community. I'm meeting with a guy named Ron Finley next week. He's known as the gangster gardener of LA.
Oh, I love it.
He has installed urban gardens into South Central.
I've seen stories about him.
Yeah, he's amazing. So the fact that I get to sit down with people and see how they are using their skills on behalf of their community is cool. Go for it.
And get that information out.
And get that information out, because then all of a sudden it doesn't feel so big. All of a sudden you're up in Chico or you're in Washington, D.C., and you see that same problem happening in your community and you think, oh, maybe I can do that. So I love that. I mean, I really don't think that I'm like a dark soul who's addicted to a David and Goliath. I think it's fun to poke fun at these big corporations, but you gotta make the conversation smaller, more specific. I think that the work that you do and what I do is not that different, because you're focusing on people changing themselves so that they can go out into the world and be healthier people.
Be better citizens, better.
And at the end of the day, that when the rubber hits the road on all these issues, it happens on a community to community basis. You know, if you want to get more gardens in your community, if you want to get clean energy in your community, it happens on the local bills. It happens by you getting together with a few friends and figuring out how to make it happen, because that's the only way that it ever has. But I think we spend way too much time focusing on national politics, not nearly enough time focusing on local politics.
That's really interesting.
And when you frame it that way, then all of a sudden it's doable.
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting, especially, and I wasn't trying to suggest that there's some like internal conflict you're trying to resolve by this thing, but it's taken on a big message.
I figured out all my shit, bro. I got no issues.
It's you're taking on big messages.
I don't cry, I work out.
All right, perfect. Well, I have a kettlebell. Yeah. We don't have a lot of workout gear, so you're
wet.
stuck. It's a lot of people don't have the gumption or the I'm a Jew, so I'll say chutzpah or whatever to take on those messages because it feels too big. So I love that you both understand how big it is, but at the same time can bring it down to a smaller story that people can understand. Like you said, a 4-minute YouTube video, you better have that shit nailed or nobody's ever going to watch it. If you just sit around and say, just so you guys know, in Chile, there's this coal company that is trying to, start a coal mine right next to an ocean. And it sucks because the ocean waves were really great there. Nobody will ever watch that video. You have to really get people to lean in. And these stories that I'm hearing you doing now, because this does all relate to how you see the world that you live in and how you want to take care of it. There's another element that I think is amazing about it that I want to bring up, and that is telling the good stories. We are so inundated with everything that is wrong in the world that if you woke up, it feels like we live in an ER right now. Like if you work in an ER, you wake up, you go to work, and people are dying next to you all the time. Like people are bleeding, they lost limbs, they got shot, they get stabbed. It gets really debilitating because you start seeing the world as damage and trauma. That's the world we're living in now. I mean, most of the people, and it's insane for me to say this because it's so different from the way that it was like when I was growing up and my parents' advice. But most of the people that I now know say, look, stay informed on what's happening in the world, but stop watching the fucking news. Because all it's doing is pointing out to you and pushing it in your face that there's damage and carnage and death and destruction. And it's true that is happening, but it's not the only shit that's happening. And if we don't start refocusing our effort, when I work with people, one of the first things I do is I help them start out in the day with some gratitude list or something that they're looking forward to in the day. Because if you bias your brain towards damage and dirt and destruction, that's the orientation you're going to have to start out your day. Why not orient towards the positive? And so talking about a guy who's building urban gardens in an area where people wouldn't expect that to be a big thing, what that does to the community, people walking by greenery where they've been used to concrete jungles, the environment in terms of oxygen and all of that together is the message, right? Why can't we start helping each other and putting more focus on the help and the love that we're sharing with each other versus the destruction?
Yeah. And I think reimagining our relationship with nature is a big part of it. It's kind of a cliche question to ask, but asking what is your relationship with nature? I think it's important because I think that a lot of the solutions that we're going to get to in the next few years, a lot of the research that you do and talk about, it's stuff that we used to know, but somewhere along the way we forgot. And if you don't know, if you're listening to this and you don't know what I'm talking about, I'd say that getting in nature and feeling it as soon as you can, go down to the ocean and just jump in. Yeah. You'll know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Go get a state park pass, go on a hike, be out there. I mean, for the mental clarity that it gives you, but also for the physical. Our buddy Chris, I was listening to a great podcast that he did with a guy named Jeff Leach. He's known as the microbiome.
Oh my God, that was so amazing.
Do you know who he is?
Yeah, we'll put a link to that because it was amazing.
So he works with the Hadza out in, is it the Amazon or in Africa?
I don't remember that.
Anyway, he studies their poop. He's known as Poop Jeff. He studies their microbiome because a lot of the science is coming out now that our microbiomes are very much linked to mood, autoimmune disorders, depression.
Yep.
And if we can diversify our microbiomes, it can help all of that stuff. And what Jeff Leach argues in the podcast, he says, my work is the greatest gift to the environmental movement because it's not only what you eat that influences your microbiome, but where you live. The diversity of plants and animals in your area also influences your microbiome. So going and getting barefoot and walking in the dirt and breathing in the trees can influence your microbiome and influence your mood on a biological level.
I don't think it's possible to overstate how different this way of thinking is than the way of thinking that was around when I grew up. Around the purity and the scientific kind of Western medical nature of things, right? Where keep everything as sterile as possible all the time. Don't get exposed to any bacteria. Get exposed to no external dirt. Why? Because that stuff is dirty and it'll mess you up. And we're slowly moving to realize, talk about your relationship with nature. We would die very literally if there were no bacteria around. Right, we would stop being able to digest food the way we digest it. That's probably a big part of the reason why people are having such extreme autoimmune disorder issues is because our systems don't have the context, the microbiome to operate within that they need. I actually started daily taking some supplements around taking.
Yeah, what do you take?
Essentially taking bacteria. It's this product. It's called Amare, but it's a conglomerate of probiotics, prebiotics, and some like a fiber compound that those micronutrients are supposed to feed on, right? It's like, because it's not just about the bacteria, but it's also providing the bacteria with what they need to survive. And 10, 15 years ago, that would have sounded to me insane. Because, again, we can go really far back, like Louis Pasteur and the idea that there is bacteria in our food and holy shit, what are we doing with it? But back then, like the reason pasteurization became so big is because the idea was there's bacteria, we need to get rid of it.
Right. Yeah, it's a philosophy. When you start pulling on that thread, it becomes really interesting. It's fear of the natural world, this idea that the natural world will kill you because it's dangerous and germs will
And we
make
need
you
to
sick.
control it.
Yeah, we need to control it. It's everyone. I think it's so crazy. Just those little statements that are made when you grow up, in your household. Like, what was your household's relationship to nature?
Sure.
Right. And how has that impacted you?
My dad was a physician, so everything was around the medical model of life, right? Keep everything as clean as possible. There's a straight answer to every question, right? The very kind of mathematical, linear way of looking at the world. Fortunately, I married a woman who's like the exact opposite of that, and so it challenged a lot of that. But yeah, I absolutely looked at the world as let's keep it as clean as possible. Scientifically created things that were made in labs are better than things that were made in nature. I 100% grew around there. Like aspirin. I didn't know until probably like 10 years ago that aspirin is a derivative from a tree bark. What people, like indigenous people, used to chew on this stuff when they were in pain, it would reduce their pain. And scientists went in and said, what is the thing in it? They identified aspirin and it became a thing for us. Well, guess what? It's not just about the aspirin. It's about all the other chemicals that are present. I mean, we now know the answers to a lot of these things, the complexity of nature that it delivers. It's had a little more time than we've had as humans to develop into its ideal version. And if we can now combine the knowledge we have with an understanding of how to interface within it, and it sounds like you're kind of in the foreground or in the front of even asking the questions of where is that relationship? Because you ask about family, like my family never went camping. We never camped. So my relationship to nature wasn't really created until beach. The beach was huge for me because in Israel, that's where we all went.
What are the beaches like there?
First of all, they're incredibly warm because it's the Mediterranean. So it's like a big hot tub. And in the summer, I mean, the ocean is literally like 78 or 80 degrees. And it's 100 outside, so it's still refreshing. But the entire country goes to the beaches. So you would spend hours a day at the beach growing up. All my friends surfed, we body surfed. And so it's still sand, it's still nature. But like camping, I never did. So it's like a limited relationship.
Right. Yeah, I have a buddy who's a surfer named Cliff Capono. He's a professional surfer and a scientist, and he's doing a study right now about surfers' microbiomes.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah, he's going around the world measuring the surfers' microbiomes to see if they're different than other people's.
Okay.
The
Comparing
microbiome, but because by being in the salt water so much, how does that affect our microbiomes? And I don't know the answers, but it'll come out soon. Have you ever read a book called Blue Mind?
No.
It's by a guy named Wallace J. Nichols. It's about how I think the tagline is how the surprising science of water changes the way you think or the way your mind works. So he has been working with a number of scientists from, I believe it's UC Berkeley, to find out how simply being in the ocean affects your cortisol levels.
Oh, interesting.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a very poetic speaker. I always recommend Blue Mind to people.
Okay. I love it. We're going to do a little about face because in the context of all this work you've been doing and, pointing out these deficiencies in our relationship to nature, but maybe importantly in the players that are part of that, you and our friend Chris have recently embarked on a new project that I think will be fun and I could, like, knowing Chris, and I've only known the guy for like a year and a half, 2 years, but when I saw him sharing about it, I was like, that's exactly what fucking Chris is going to do. And I hadn't known you yet, so now it even makes more sense. Right. But why don't you tell people about this a little bit?
Sure. So for people who don't know, I'll back up. Chris Ryan is a good buddy of mine. He's an author. He wrote the book Sex at Dawn, New York Times bestseller. And I live in the dude's van while I'm down here. And we're buddies. We have, I think it would be an oversimplification to say that he's my mentor because it implies this like mentee. But I learn a lot from the guy. I'm trying to become a better writer. He looks at all my work. We go on bike rides through Topanga Canyon together. We went down to Baja last year on a little writing retreat. I kind of like crack the whip on him when he's not writing. I'm like, come
I
on, dude,
love
let's
it.
make it happen.
Okay.
But he's such a sharp thinker.
Totally.
I find that I learn so much when I'm around him.
He's like a great modern philosopher.
Great modern philosopher. Yeah. And we came up with an idea together that was born from the frustration of not being able to talk about environmental issues without people's eyes glazing over. It's called the Motherfucker Awards.
Nobody's eyes glaze over when you say the Motherfucker Awards.
And we're celebrating the companies that fuck Mother Earth the hardest. The motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Which ones warm her up and penetrate her?
Oh my God. And you went to Gaia University, right?
Yeah.
Of course, this hits close to home.
Yeah, I don't know how they're going to feel about it. I feel like we're going to piss off a lot of environmentalists with this.
Yeah.
We're going to make everyone angry. So
Do you think because it makes fun of it, or why do you think
I
it's going
think
to piss
that
people off?
environmentalists are so earnest and holier than thou and angry, and I kind of can't stand them. I mean, I appreciate a lot of their work, but I get why people can't stand
Sure.
environmentalists. I think it's yeah. Anyway,
So the Motherfucker
the
Awards.
Motherfucker Awards. It's an awards show where it's happening on December 4th. So I think it will have just happened.
Yep.
And
So the winners will be known by the time people listen to this.
the winners will be known. So we're getting famous comedians to accept the Motherfucker Awards on behalf of the companies.
And like roast the companies while they
give
accept them?
acceptance speeches.
Fuck yes.
Talking about all of their accomplishments.
Sorry, I didn't mean
we're
to use
good.
the word roast. I didn't want to suggest by any stretch that they would be poking fun.
No,
at these companies.
we won't be poking fun. It's an honor. We're celebrating these companies. So for and then we have best in class journalists as presenters. So it was 6 categories. There's land, air, water, fire, spirit, and reality. So for the spirit category, it's the company that did the most to break the human spirit. For reality,
Just saying that out loud is like a kick to the nuts.
For reality, it's the company that most impressively mind-fucked humanity. For land, it's for making the dirt dirtier than ever. For air, it's for making our atmosphere more quote-unquote interesting. And for fire, it's for doing the most to turn Earth into a post-apocalyptic hellscape. So, for example, for the Air Award, this goes back to the banking thing. We're nominating the 3 banks that have done the most to finance dirty energy in the last year. And we're getting Rolling Stone journalist Matt Taibbi to present the award, the Motherfucker Award. They're these big
amazing.
awards with a middle finger spinning a globe to the comedians, and then the comedians get to accept the awards. And we're really excited to hear what the companies have to say, how they feel about winning these prestigious prizes.
Who are some of the comedians that are involved?
We have so far it's Natasha Leggero, Moshe Kasher, the Yes Men. You know who the Yes Men are? They're amazing. We're taking a page out of their book. They're the OG corporate accountability through comedy comedians. They actually impersonate corporations and have been for years, where they'll create a website, and then when media calls asking for a representative from Dow to come on BBC World News, they do it, and then they you should check this out. Check out Yes Men Dow Chemical on YouTube. Has a few million views. These guys went on BBC World News as representatives of Dow and said that they were going to liquidate one of their companies, Union Carbide, which was responsible for the Bhopal disaster in India. A chemical plant exploded and thousands of people died, and the families had received very minimal compensation. So they went on and they said that they were going to liquidate Union Carbide and pay the families back who had lost loved ones. So on BBC World News, the anchor is like, this is such an amazing,
Thank you so much
moral decision for doing the right thing. And the yes men, they say, you know, our shareholders may take a small hit, but it's the right thing to do. And meanwhile, they get off, and then Dow Chemical has to call and be like, no, we're not compensating them.
Wow.
Yeah, so they've been doing this forever. So we're getting them to win the, they're doing the Facebook award. You would appreciate this, the spirit category for the company that's done the most to break the human spirit.
Yeah,
I can talk about this now.
I'm sure they're going to be some of my favorites.
Yeah, the 3 nominees are Smith & Wesson. They're a firearms manufacturing company. The AR-15 Smith & Wesson was used in many of the mass shootings that recently happened.
It's a wonderful weapon.
It's a wonderful weapon for
very reliable, apparently,
getting that
for
kind of
mass
stuff
shootings.
done. Exactly. Core Civic, they're a private prisons company, and they're making record profits this year.
That's great.
And Purdue Pharma, the makers of OxyContin.
So it's a really tight field. I mean, it's going to be strong competition.
It's really
there.
strong. It's really strong. And Simon Rex, aka Dirt Nasty, the rapper,
Shut the fuck up.
is going to be accepting.
Simon Rex is accepting.
He's going to be accepting the award for Purdue Pharma.
He may have tried some substance before in his life.
It's actually amazing because he talks about having struggled with this stuff, and I think that he's highly motivated to do a good acceptance speech.
I was a Mickey Avalon fan back in the day, so Dirt Nasty was a big part of that crew.
Exactly. He's a really thoughtful guy. I recently had him on my podcast. Very philosophical. Another Chris Ryan connection. So Chris and I, for the last few months, have been writing the show and booking the comedians, booking the presenters, and turning it into a whole thing. And it's new for me. I love comedy, but have always felt a little confined to earnest documentary filmmaking, which it's one way of communication where you're on the beach in Chile and you say, hey, we should all care about this, guys. But I don't think it's the most effective way to communicate things. And man, having a sense of humor about the state of the world sure does help. And having a chance to do a comedy project like this has provided a battery pack of energy for me to do all of this energy.
Yeah.
I mean, all this research.
Yeah.
So I can be researching Purdue Pharma and learning that oxy and the opioid epidemic is now the leading cause of death among people under 50. And I can figure out a way to turn that into a joke.
Yeah.
Like all of a sudden,
or like the fact that 14 million pills were sold out of a small town with like 2 pharmacies that has, I think, like
in Florida, right?
4,000 people. No, I think it's somewhere in the South.
Appalachia, maybe.
Yeah. And you literally, like, it was enough to give an annual supply of like 3 or 4 pills a day to everybody in that for the next 100 years or something.
Right.
And you look at it, yes, I mean, I talk about the field that I'm in, it's almost like you're not ever allowed to have levity, but you have to. Because if you go down that rabbit hole, then you start believing that everything is dark constantly. And if you can't at least throw rocks and poke fun at the people that are creating this fucked up reality, then
we're not throwing rocks. Everyone in the audience is going to be tweeting and Instagramming the winners throughout the evening, congratulating them on their motherfucker awards. So
amazing.
All of these winners will receive a
lot of attention.
They'll receive a lot of attention and recognition.
They spend a lot of money on
work.
PR.
Yeah,
and you guys are just giving them a little help.
Hey, any publicity is good publicity. So, we need to get the addresses to ship their motherfucker awards. But yeah, I think that they're gonna have a very.
It's gonna be a fun 4th.
It's gonna be a fun 4th. Yeah, we have a burlesque troupe that's gonna do a strip tease to "If You're Good to Mama, Mama's Good to You."
Was that Chris's idea?
That was my idea.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
I love it.
It's really fun to work with Chris on this because it's the closest thing I've ever done to riffing, like a musical riff. I've never played an instrument, but we'll like come up with like, wait, what is okay, would this work and would that work? It's like you're digging, and then all of a sudden you hit something like, oh, that's the
what
joke.
we gotta do.
That's the joke.
I love it.
Yeah, it's a really fun collaboration, and we have such a big and talented team involved, full of graphic designers and a production team, set designers.
Are you guys emceeing it?
We will most likely MC it. Yeah, but we're still figuring out a few of those details right there. But it's funny. It's like giving all these people who normally have to do big corporate gigs, like film gigs and graphic design gigs, to like be a part of something that makes them feel like little rascals.
I feel like if Joe Rogan or something got in on something, like he would go ham on it. Like I feel like one of those guys who makes the point of his life is to poke fun at the big bear.
Right.
Because this is so obviously, this is like a roast, but the people aren't part of it. Like, right. So it's like, hey, we're here and we're going to make so much noise. You might think we're little. This is back to that David Goliath thing, right? You might think we're little, but on this fucking day, and if we do a good job for a long time after, you're going to hear and you're going to care. You're going to pay attention. I don't care if you didn't watch the documentary that I made. This shit you're gonna hear.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy how afraid people are of corporate power. The amount of people that have come to me like, are you afraid of getting sued? Like, what if these guys come after you? I think it was Terrence McKenna said, too many people are doing the man's job for the man. And that's been something it's been surprising.
You know what I also love though? And I don't mean to put you on the spot in this place, but you and Chris are like the perfect people to do this shit.
Right.
What the fuck are they going to take? Your surfboard?
Yeah, exactly.
Come after me.
Yeah.
Spend $5 million suing me.
I got no assets.
I got nothing. Like I rent an apartment with 4 dudes in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
You can get my lease if you want it.
Right.
You know, like I love that because in the end, I mean, that's why the David Goliath thing works, right? Is you get to jump up and say the things that other people wouldn't necessarily. And the people on the other side are going to get it. They're going to realize. They're going to sit there and go like, shit, the only recourse we have is to shut the fuck up. Because if we make a deal out of this, you guys win by doing the awards. That's it. Like as soon as the thing is out, there will be more negative press on those guys. And my father-in-law, by the way, is a documentary filmmaker. So like he's still working on a film on the BP oil spill. And, decade out, the number of people who are suffering, dying, cancer, all that stuff. And it's really serious. And they've been down there, I don't even know how many times. And the hope is that will affect some lives. But unless one of those projects blows up and does incredibly well, companies don't care. They'd rather back up and just let that stuff pass. This is gonna be one of those things that is just gonna create so much noise that would almost be fun if they would react, right? Like if you could poke them enough to make them wake up, that would be fun.
Yeah. I really hope that they respond so we can send them their trophies and want to know how they feel for getting such a prestigious honor and the first annual Motherfucker Awards.
It's always nice to be first.
Yeah. We also will be donating 10% of all the alcohol sales to Ron Finley's organization, the Gangster Gardener. And we'll be highlighting a number of other organizations that we're labeling the cock blockers. They're cock blocking the motherfuckers. These are the environmental and social
Helpers.
Organizations. Yeah.
That's
You would be labeled as a cock blocker with the work that you're doing against Purdue Pharma.
Well, I do what I can. That's amazing. So this is December 4th. By the time this comes out, it'll be out, and we'll time this in time for that. I don't want to hear the winners because I want to be there.
Okay.
And so you're still. This sounds like the main project you've been on for the last few months.
Yeah.
I've got 5 questions we ask everybody who comes on this, and I'm gonna start asking them of you, and I'm interested. I'm interested in where this goes. So the first one is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice I've ever received was to take a CPR class.
Okay. Do you remember who gave you that?
Yeah, my brother. My brother's a firefighter. And man, the amount of ocean rescues I've had to do, the amount of times someone has fallen down, and most of the time you don't have to do full on CPR to them, but to be the person who in that situation can act and has the ability to react is, I think, it's something that everyone should be able to do, because it's a skill that you can learn in a day. And someone told me in the CPR class, they say, we're teaching you to be responsible. And if you decouple that word, it's response-able. It's your ability to respond in this moment. And man, you see bystander effect happen for real, and it's a thing. Everyone just stands there. No one does anything. But to decide that you are going to be the person who can respond in a situation like that is a very empowering experience. So I think that everyone should take a CPR class.
I love it. We'll have some links to some resources around finding one near you. Most fire departments hold them. That's part of the way they make some of their money, is by holding, and firefighters will teach CPR classes. Where's your brother a firefighter?
He's in San Jose.
Okay. We have a really dear friend who's a Ventura firefighter, going through all the craziness that's happening right now.
Yeah.
It's insane.
How's a firefighter?
Yeah, he's I think he lives in Thousand Oaks,
right,
which is kind of where the epicenter of some of these things were. And he was a first responder to the shooting. Then the next day, these insane fires started.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously in Northern California is when it's like just destroying towns.
Yeah.
Is he involved in all that right now?
He's in San Jose City, so I don't know if they've been dispatched out to Northern California, but I'll give him a call and ask.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. Next question. What has been the proudest moment you've had to date?
To date, in my life.
Your entire life.
Proudest.
All 75 years on Earth.
So I was at Burning Man a couple of years ago, and I participated in an event called the Slut Olympics.
Okay.
And the Slut Olympics, there's a discipline called the Speed Boner Competition. And the Speed Boner Competition is an event where you stand naked in front of thousands of people.
Thousands?
Yeah, about 2,000 people.
Okay.
And there's a line of men, and you go up with a partner, and the goal is to get a boner in front of a couple thousand people, but your partner cannot touch your cock. So it's the ultimate Jedi mind trick, where you need to get a boner with no stimulation around the cock. And I decided to do the speed boner competition because I was like, you know what? We have so much shame around our bodies. I'm a dude. I was born naked. My whole goal was like, I want to do this just to get over that. So I got up there and I got naked.
Man. Talk about David and Goliath shit. Like, you just fucking go for it. I want to get over this body shame shit, so I'm going to get up naked in front of 2,000 people.
Oh, it's the
Not
worst
like
that can happen.
streak on my street.
Well, the funny thing is the dude next to me too had this like elephant hog where I was like, shit. Damn it, I thought I was going to get over this. I didn't win the competition.
Oh, man.
But
you did it.
I did it. It was a proud moment in my life.
I can't believe you're going to make me use that on my podcast, but now I have to.
Yeah,
because otherwise I'm promoting body shame by not using this story. You just caught me.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Motherfucker Awards. We put you into a little corner. It's anti-fragile.
God damn it. I think this is the first time cock has been mentioned on this podcast. But there's always a first. So maybe it's nice to be first. You are now first. You didn't win that competition.
Yeah,
you won this competition.
Exactly.
So, that's good. I'm kind of scared to ask you about this next one, but what has been the most painful or difficult moment of your life to date?
Most painful or difficult moment of my life to date? Man. When I was 15, I was down in Mexico, and I was on a trip with my dad and my brother. And on the third day of the trip, I started getting a stomach ache, and I thought that I had food poisoning. Okay, I'll ride it out. It started getting worse and worse until on the third day, my dad said, "We need to take you to the hospital." So we go to this little hospital in the middle of Michoacan, Mexico, very, very rural area. And they put me on a gurney and they say, they do some tests on me and they tell my dad, who speaks very little Spanish, I spoke no Spanish at the time, that I'd ruptured my appendix.
Right.
And they need
That's what it sounded like.
to operate on me immediately. My brother's there. My brother calls my mom and says, Kimberly, Kyle's appendix just ruptured. They're going to do emergency surgery on him
Appendicitis.
right now. And the phone, click, dies. And my mom doesn't get another call for a day because he can't get more credit to call her back.
Oh my God.
So meanwhile, they have me in the surgery room. My dad's standing over me. My dad loves telling this part of the story. They had put an IV in me to administer the drugs, and the nurse comes up and she puts a needle in the IV, starts to push it down. The doctor runs up behind her and goes, no, not him, over there.
They're administering the drugs to the wrong people. And
so they take it out, and my dad just goes white. He's like, holy shit. Meanwhile, he's researching and saying that and learning that,
oh, you got to do it.
You got to
ASAP.
do it now. You can't
wait.
fly anyone. So we got to do it.
You got like a couple of hours before you're done.
Right. So they put me under. They cut open my stomach, a big scar from my belly down to my pubic bone. They do the appendectomy on me. I wake up, and at the time I didn't know how serious it was, which I think was a really good thing. And I wake up and my dad stands over me for the whole week as we're there before I get healthy enough to be able to be moved. And the whole time my dad has been talking with the hospital about the billing, and they say, it's fine. We'll handle the billing at the end of it when you fly home. So we're going out to leave the hospital. And my dad says, okay, well, we want to pay now. How much is this? Here's my credit card. And they say, no, we don't take credit cards, cash only. My dad says, well, we need to get our flight. Like, we got to get out of here right now. And he says, well, how much is it? They're like, American, $90.
Shut the fuck up.
He's like, wait, $90 for a week in a hospital and emergency appendectomy? They're like, $90. Puts $100 down.
Keep the fucking change, man.
Gets $10 change. We use the change to get in the cab ride and fly home.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Whew. Were you in severe pain that whole week?
I wasn't that whole week, but after the fact, I had digestive issues for the next couple of years. It was difficult for me to eat red meat. I'm fine now. I have a lot of scar tissue down there, but it was a painful next few years after that.
Damn. Okay.
Maybe it wasn't the most painful moment, but it was a good story.
Yeah. And now I have a new appreciation for the story you told right before it. So wow. I think I'm still a little shell shocked from that one before. I don't think I've ever had a story like that as my somebody's proudest moment. Okay. Maybe in light of the story you just told us, but in the world you travel around, etc. How do you take care of yourself? What is your self-care ritual to make sure that you're at whatever you call your best on a regular basis?
Yeah, I'm big into that because surfing. So I would say that my kind of specialty is surfing big waves.
Yep.
I'm an alternate for the Mavericks contest this year, and we don't know when a big swell is coming.
Yeah.
So you have about a week from the time that the swell shows up on the charts to when you're surfing it.
Oh my God, wait, I got to go into that. You had a week?
You always have a week.
Before you find out that the wave's coming?
Yeah.
Where the fuck is the wave coming from if it takes it a week?
It's coming from halfway around the world, man. If you're if you're out at the beach here in Santa Monica and you see a big wave coming in, chances are that energy originated from New Zealand or the Kamchatka Peninsula up near Russia. That's where a lot of these storms form. And then
The winds.
So storms form as a result of wind, and it's the amount, it's the strength of the wind and the area that the wind covers for a period of time. That's called the fetch. And if wind blows for a long time in a specific spot, in a strong way, then that creates swell. So it's like picture breathing on a puddle or something like that, right? That starts to create waves, just like sound energy. You scream,
Sure.
It's oscillating up and down. The energy's moving through the ocean. And ocean, the water is a really great conductor.
And it like amplifies it over
Yeah,
time
so
too,
like
right?
a whale in Santa Cruz, humpback whale in Santa Cruz, their call can be heard 300 miles north. So all of these energy waves are moving through the ocean at any one time. And then what causes a wave to break is the bottom contours of the ocean. It's called the bathymetry. So the swells hit an obstruction and that creates a wave. So depending on the angle that the swell came in, depending on the tide, depending on the local wind patterns, that is what makes good waves. So we're basically always trying to figure out a combination that each wave has. So this wave is good on northwest swells at low tide with east winds, right? So Mavericks is a really big wave that doesn't get good very often. But when it does get good, you have, maybe 5 days to prep for it. So I always just try and stay in decent shape rather than going hard
Optimal.
and then dropping off. And I find that what helps me the most is a few things. I meditate for about 10 minutes most mornings.
Morning? Okay.
Right now I'm using the Waking Up app with Sam Harris. It's good. I really enjoy it. And I think he's a talented meditative teacher. So I do that. I do a lot of cardio. So I do a lot of run, swim, runs. That's my favorite workout in the whole wide world. Do a beach run, swim a buoy, run back. It's a really good one for surfing because you're kind of exhausted jumping into the ocean and then you're only getting a breath every 2 or 3 strokes. So it teaches you to be comfortable out of breath. I do Pilates with a bunch of 50-year-old women and they kick my ass.
Yeah.
I find that that's really good for core stabilization and just sweating, that kind of connectivity really helps. I haven't been injured in years.
This is like reformer kind of Pilates or the floor Pilates?
Floor Pilates.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of like burpees, plank position, various flows, and you're just dripping sweat.
Versus yoga.
Yeah. I mean, they also teach yoga there. So I do yoga too, but it's a bit like high intensity yoga. So yeah, I love doing Pilates. I love spearfishing. I get bored easily, so I always am looking for new stuff.
Yeah.
Spearfishing is really fun. Bow hunting is really fun. I've been getting into that over the last couple of years. I'm not very good, but I've gone on a few hunts, and that's exhausting, man. If you're hiking out through the woods all day long, that tears you up, man.
Yeah.
So I do all that and I surf a lot. I mean, surfing's the main thing. I surf most days and that's good cardio. But it's so fun, man. I think that if I have a little bit of insecurity about my surfing because there are a lot of people that are way better than me and I kind of double as a journalist and surfer. But man, I have a good relationship with it.
Yeah.
Like, because my whole identity isn't based around
Surfing.
being a surfer. And I see it get ruined for so many guys and gals because that's their only thing. And then when the waves get big, they have to get the biggest wave of the day. Otherwise, they're not going to get their next contract signed. And, it's the road ends the same way for most pro athletes, which is that you're celebrated as a young person and then sooner or later that contract expires and then you end up as a 35-year-old with few job skills in the real world.
Yeah.
So I recognized early on that I love surfing. I love the culture. I love the places that it takes me. But to not put all of my eggs in that basket. So I see it as a way that, it can, Patagonia helped me pay for the plane ticket to go down to Chile, where then I did that story on the Mapuche, which then I could sell to Discovery. So I'm a hustler, baby.
I love it. There's not a lot of Laird Hamiltons who decades later are still relevant.
Right. And he's a brilliant marketer. He lives in Malibu and has his own brand and all that. So I like exposing myself to different worlds.
Love it. That's awesome. Last but not least, this podcast is called Ignited. And we like to ask everybody that we have on, what gets you ignited? What gets you going? What gets your fire up?
What gets my fire up? Man, after that sled Olympics thing, asking what gets my fire up is kind of an awkward question, man.
You know, I think everything that comes after that story is an awkward question.
You're
statement.
shifty.
I know.
Shifty. Woo! Sweating. Is it hot in here?
Definitely getting warmer. I thought it was cool this morning. But.
You know what most right now is podcasting and writing. I'm spending a huge amount of time. I do 2 podcasts a week.
Oh, wow.
On my show, get to talk with all kinds of fun people, and writing comedy because it's forcing me to tinker with words in a way that I never have. And so often I don't say exactly what I mean. And I go back and I think I'll probably come back and listen to this conversation and be like, that didn't really come out the way that I wanted it to. But writing is such a perfect medium for distilling thought and saying exactly what you mean. And that feels so good.
You like crafting it and really just getting it tight.
I love crafting it. Yeah, and obsessing over that. So that what's getting my fire going right now is writing. And I write for a few different media outlets, so that kind of keeps the I have a monthly column in a few different magazines, so that keeps the muscle, flexed. But I feel like now more than ever I'm kind of taking that next leap in and be like, yeah, actually this is something that maybe I could do.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. Thanks for being so many firsts here on this podcast. December 4th, we will have winners by the time we have this, and we will hashtag and all that kind of stuff. We'll also have links. We talked about so many different things. We're going to have links to all that stuff.
Oh God,
here.
you link on your podcast. That's a lot of work.
Yeah, fortunately I don't have to do it. I get help for that, but we will have a lot of links and all these YouTube videos and all these things you've already done to talk about environmental issues. I think that'll be really, really important for people. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, best place for people to reach me is my website, kyle.surf.
Oh,
not .com, just kyle.surf. And if you want to check out the motherfuckerawards.com, it's motherfuckerawards.com, and hopefully you get a laugh.
Yeah. And if you don't, then maybe you're part of that crew that Kyle was talking about earlier, and you need to get a sense of humor.
Maybe they'll get a laugh too.
Yeah. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you, Kyle, for making the trip. I love this. This was really, really cool. And we will see you all next week. Bye. Thank you, everybody, for listening to the Ignited podcast. We were so happy to have you along for this ride. Please go and subscribe to this. Leave us a review. We love hearing from you. And if you want more, don't forget to go to ignited.com, where all the podcast episodes are available with show notes and so many of the little details and links from each one of these interviews. And you can look at all the future events that we have going on, all the things that make Ignited so special, even beyond this recording. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you next week.